Welcome to our fourth and final part of our enterprise content marketing data plan. All right, so we have talked through your people, your reporting, how you're gonna do that, your technologies involved, how do you mitigate those technologies. Now we're gonna talk a little bit more tactical about what do you actually need to get done. Hi, my name is JJ Reynolds, founder at Vision Labs, where we help companies from 5 million to hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue measure and maximize their use of their data using our data order of operations. Let's hop into it. So you now have a general idea of where you're going, right? You have your 2 metric tangos, you have the idea around what structure of content you're gonna need. Let's just reiterate what you need on your website. So first is you wanna try and make it as stupid simple to understand why content exists. That's gonna start with your URL folders, okay? So you wanna have as simple of URL structure as you possibly can. URLs that have maybe the name of what it is inside of the actual content. There are exceptions to this. So for example, you say I'll make it simple, /lead magnets /name of lead magnets. Now your website, website.com, has /lead magnet beekeeping guide. You know what it is, you know what's a lead magnet, etc. You could then even go further. You could say /lead magnet /webinar /beekeeping guide. So it's a beekeeping guide for the webinar. Again, this just really helps. If you can keep that URL structure really tight, it helps two things. It helps one, the measuring the outcomes that we've already talked about, as far as having those 2 metric tangos, the expectation to the outcome. But it also even helps your teams to be like, why does this page exist? And you're like, oh, I can look at the URL. It's much simpler than saying, hey, there's a data layer in this Airtable thing that we built that's a reverse ETL into Notion that does this thing that tells you what that's there. So level 1 of defense, have a URL structure that makes sense. Next, let's talk data layers. So a data layer is a piece of JavaScript code that is on your site. If you're super technical as a developer, you're like, this is the easiest thing on earth. It lives in the browser, it is JavaScript, it is super straightforward. If you are a non-technical marketer, it's gonna sound like it is mental. Like you're like, what is this? I don't know what this is. What is a script tag? Why is there little alligator clips surrounding it? And that's okay. What you need to know is a data layer. That is what structures what information you can pass into your tag management system. What you wanna try and do is focus on if you're focusing on your content, is when the page loads, maybe have the authors, the publish date, the category, the tags. The category and tags can really help you differentiate your silos as opposed to putting that in the URL, right? If you have /blog, /category, the name of the category, it gets exhausting and your URLs can get really big. We want to try and keep those big and maybe just say /blog, /category, and then the name of the article, right? So /blog, bees, and /how to keep bees alive. There's our example. So we want to try to use the data layer to function on that. And then lastly is the actual conversion. So on your website, you're going to want to make sure your data layer is functioning for conversions. It's really popular to try and use a tag management system to use URL parameters or like a view item event. At the end of the day, if you can have a developer pass the information to the data layer for when something is done, like a webinar registration or a PDF download or a sign up, a free trial, etc., it will make everyone's life more easier because you know for a fact that it's working. Usually when code is shipped, it works, knock on wood, but it normally works. And then you know that you have full control. So what we try to have is a conversion name. So for example, you'll have that data layer event push, and you'll say, hey, this is the data layer event of sign up. You want to know what they signed up for and the type of sign up. So they need what and the type. A quick interruption to let you know about our due audit. Yes, the data order of operations audit. Go to visionlabs.com/DOO. Fill out an application and we will run through every single step of the data order of operations, from conversion tracking through to forecasting and everything in between, to make sure your organization is where it needs to be and you have a clear path to get there if you are not currently there. We both run through strategic and technical with your team. It is one of the most amazing things out there, and teams walk away with a strategic roadmap and a plan to get there. So if you can get that, so say for example, it was a free trial and the type is of our basic plan. Or if you say what they sign up for, the beekeeping ultimate guide, and type was a PDF, right? So you can have those things really structured of the what and the type. So now your website is more or less humming along, right? You've got those core pieces that we've talked about structured. Now let's move on to tag management. So I'm just going to use Google Tag Manager as the basic example here. So you have your website. Let's just say, for example, it's built on WordPress for the sake of simplicity. It could be built on anything. I don't really care. Google Tag Manager then is going to layer on top of that. You're going to place that Tag Manager code in the head of your site, and it is going to automatically track a lot of things for you. This is the beauty of Google Tag Manager, and most any tag manager segment. It doesn't really matter on that front, because you get out of the box, usually you get views, you get some of video engagements, and scrolls. You can also get event visibility as another trigger, but those are the three main things that you get out of the box on that. So you can trigger things off of when something is viewed, when the page loads, when videos are viewed, percentage of views, and when someone scrolls down the page. You want to use Tag Manager to capture those listeners and send that data on to your analytics tool of choice. The two big customizations you're going to have to make are around your call to actions. So again, we've built our plan, we know what we're doing, we know what's happening. Now we have to implement. So call to actions in general, there are two different ways of doing this. The figure it out and find out, where you try to figure out what's happening. But in the ideal world, you use data layer. So you don't have to have anything here. You can set up an event to listen for that data layer push of developer sent what that is, and then you use variables to capture everything else, ideally. If you don't have that ability, you want to really try and say, hey, let's use this in the simplest way possible to capture these conversion events. All right, so now you have these conversion events. Ideally, you have the what and the type as well. Now we're going to pass that on to Google Analytics. At its core, Google Analytics does two things. It stitches a session together. That session is a user's conversation with the site. So a user consists of multiple sessions, and those multiple sessions make up that user. So they came to your website, and what Google Analytics does, most analytics tool, is they stitch that session together. So you say this page view, and then this page view, and then this page view, and then this page view. And then you have attributes to those pages, to those sessions, and to the events of those sessions. A simple way to think about this when you are trying to ask questions of your data is this an event level thing? It's usually the lowest level of things. Then you have page types of questions, and then you have session types of questions, and then you have user type of questions. If you can think what type of question is this, it'll make it a lot easier to pull your insights out of that platform. Okay, so we're gonna use Google Analytics now, for example, to tie our sessions, our landing pages, our users, and our sources. That is gonna be telling us where our traffic's coming from, how they're interacting with the site, what landing pages are generating those outcomes. All right, so we've got that now more or less situated. The two things that we're gonna have to carry over from our website into Google Analytics, right? So on the rainbow bridge, are going to be the dimensions and metrics. And you're like, whoa, 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 dimensions and metrics, what on God's green earth are those? That is okay. A dimension is a by question. I know we talked about that in video number 2, by questions of breaking things down by different things. What we can do is we can add in, for example, our conversion types, our different types of pages. If we have different content categories, those are non-standard within Google Analytics. But what we can do is we can start saying, okay, we have our by questions that we want to use, and we can turn those into custom definitions. Custom dimensions is what they show up in the UI. Everything is a dimension or a metric. If you think of a metric as a number, you can do math, and a dimension is a by question. So city, for example, you can ask that a by question. So now we have all of our data into Google Analytics. It is stitched together those sessions. Hallelujah. We now have our next big problem. All right. We've got our website, our tag management, our analytics platform is now we have to disseminate this information to people to actually act on it, right? We are not marketers. We are the marketing technical marketers. So we want to make sure that we have all of this information and able to service it in a fast, reliable, and ideally centralized way. And so now we're going to enter into the realm of Google BigQuery. So Google BigQuery, if you are not familiar, is like Google Sheets on crack. It is rows and columns at an enterprise scale that allows you to do just about anything with those rows and columns. It's the same way you do in Google Sheets, just using a programmatic language called SQL, or database language called SQL. Or sometimes referred to as SQL. So inside of your BigQuery, you're going to now have your analytics data. So that's Google Analytics in this case. We are also going to want to try and figure out if we can get our CMS data. I know I'm pulling a quick one here, but the CMS data allows you to have a record of what the website currently is. So that could be, for example, a bunch of users. For example, the authors of your site, all the author attributes. Hey, this is Susan. Susan is a specialist in X. So that way you can join that author to their articles and you can have a very unified, cohesive report about this author. So how well does this author do? You're like, hey, how well does Susan do? She's written 36 articles. She has 10 million page views. We're like, oh my goodness, Susan is crushing it. Let's do more with Susan. Then you're going to have content from your CMS. That content is going to live in BigQuery as well, because ideally we can then say, hey, this piece of content was published on this date, was last updated this time, and we don't have to rely on Google Analytics' data layers and tag manager and that previous system I just talked about to generate that outcome, ideally. This is an ideal situation with that CMS data in your BigQuery account. Then we are going to have your sales data. I know, we're talking sales down pipeline, but in an ideal world, we can verify your website data, your product data, your sales data, your CRM data in one location. And that's gonna help your content measurement to drive those outcomes, because then we can stitch that landing page through to your initial purchase and then go from there to your purchase, to your sales team, etc., etc. But most people drop the ball on that. This is something that can get really complicated depending on how your product and your sales team and everything else works. There are tools that try and do this. There are systems that try to do this. There are HubSpot will try to be all in one, etc., etc. But the real end game here is that you can say, hey, this user has viewed all these pieces of content while before hopping on that sales call. This stack and this system allows you to do that. So now you have your general guide, right? We've talked through the website, your communication to people, and everything else. Now that your data is in BigQuery, you then have to layer on the reporting. The reason why we really recommend people going into BigQuery to begin with is for two main reasons. One, you own the data, right? It's in your account that you pay for. Number two is that it is fast because you can load up almost anything you would like from BigQuery inside of Looker Studio, our tool of choice for data visualization, and you can visualize that data. This allows you to move quickly, right? You can write new tables, you can build new visuals, and you can keep stepping on that content, moving it forward. If you do all these in sequence, right, you have your intentions and your outcomes, you have your 2 metric tangos, you have your visuals as far as what you're trying to achieve, all of this starts becoming much, much more efficient. So that's the game plan here, folks. At the end of the day, you're going to have visuals to look at, but this entire process happens behind the scenes. It's very much the same idea as a content production system. This is just your measurement production system, and the product of this is a visualization that your team can execute it on at the managerial level, the practitioner level, and director level, and you know exactly what to do based on what your intentions are.